You are listening to Genius and Soul. I'm Joseph Aleo. Welcome to our first episode. Genius and Soul is a weekly show featuring mixes lovingly handpicked from our guest DJs from the jazz and black classical music community and its many branches and roots. We're excited to kick off the new year and our first episode with a mix from Brian Jackson. Brian is an American keyboardist, flautist, singer, composer, and producer. Brian has recorded and performed with everyone from Gil Scott-Heron to Stevie Wonder and recently released an album with Jazz Is Dead's Adrian Younge and Ali Shaheed Muhammad. Today's show is special to me, not just because it's the first episode of Genius and Soul, but because I got to meet Brian in person and record his introduction in my home. I've recorded over 800 episodes of shows in my home, but this was the first time someone else was sitting at my desk, behind my microphone, recording their segments. And it's Brian Jackson, for crying out loud. It was a little surreal. Brian is a hell of a nice guy. When I invited him to guest DJ, he not only agreed to join us without a moment's hesitation, he immediately understood and appreciated what Genius and Soul is about. Meeting Brian, however, revealed his warmth, his thoughtfulness, and his charm. On today's show, Brian shares his experiences recording with Jazz Is Dead's Adrian Younge and Ali Shaheed Muhammad, Shigeto's remix of their song, Nancy Wilson, and what gets Brian in a recording studio and his New Year's resolution. We'll hear from Brian and listen to his mix in a moment. We owe a debt to the musicians who make this show possible. To this end, Genius and Soul are fundraising for the Jazz Foundation of America. The Jazz Foundation of America saves blues, jazz, and roots, one musician at a time. When age, illness, or disaster threatens a long career, many have nowhere to turn. The Jazz Foundation of America offers life-saving programs to those musicians who have given us so much. We urge you to give what you can. For more information, please visit jazzfoundation.org. Without further ado, please welcome today's guest DJ, Brian Jackson.
Hi, my name is Brian Jackson. I'm one half the duo of Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson. I'm a pianist and sometimes flautist, and somewhere along the way I learned how to sing and play at the same time. I met the manager or the founder of Jazz Is Dead, named Charu Suri. We got in contact, and he had told me about a project that he was interested in doing, basically forming a new label called Jazz Is Dead. And he was experimenting with me. I suppose I was a guinea pig. I was the first artist that was invited into the studio, into Linear Lab Studio with Adrian Younge and Ali Shaheed Muhammad to see, what would happen if various collaborations between Ali and Adrian happened. I think it went well because they went on to collaborate with 8 other artists, and all of the artists were older artists. Roy Ayers, Doug Karn, Joao Donato, Marcus Valle, Azimuth. It's been quite a series, and I've been very happy to work with them. One of the songs on that album, Jazz Is Dead 008, is a song that we ended up dedicating to the late, great singer Nancy Wilson. She was one of my favorite artists, favorite vocalists, and a very huge influence on Victor Brown, who was one of the early singers of my band, the Midnight Band, the band that I had with Gil Scott-Heron. She had just passed away, I think, pretty recently. I wanted to dedicate a song to her because she meant a lot to me and to my mom, who had just passed away not too long ago as well. When it came time for the remix album that Adrian and Ali had planned, the song Nancy Wilson was chosen as to be remixed by the artist named Shigeto. He did just a fantastic job on it. I like it. In fact, I like it probably better than the original. The thing that can get me into the studio probably the quickest is a connection with the artists and the music that they make. And as it turns out, I'm very eclectic. I have very eclectic tastes. So I've ended up in the studio with artists like Eugene Chadbourne, with artists like Alabama 3, with Roy Ayers, It goes on. And so many people I can barely remember. Kool and the Gang, Will Downing, Gwen Guthrie. It just has to be music that I can feel and music that I feel that I can contribute to. And because I like so many different kinds of music, the range happens to be quite broad. You know, every year I make a New Year's resolution, and this probably will be no different. The resolution that I usually make is not to make any resolutions, because I probably won't keep them if I make them a resolution. I just decide that I'm going to try and continue to do whatever it is that I didn't do this year. We're going to begin today's show with John Coltrane's version of the song Out of This World from his album Coltrane. It's a song that influenced me greatly because of the playing of, first of all, of John's incredible way of translating standard songs into something otherworldly. Then you have to also think about the tremendous artistry and the chordal textures of McCoy Tyner, whose birthday is coming up on December 11th, as well as Elvin Jones' incredible stick work and the fantastic Jimmy Garrison on bass. These kinds of moods and these kinds of modes that they came up with was something that influenced me greatly. John Coltrane, Out of This World. Up next is a song I only became familiar with recently. It's a song called Parallel Lean / Home Is Where the Hatred Is by Brian Jackson from my album Gotta Play. I don't know what else I can say about it. I hope you enjoy it. Well, I can say something about it. Originally, it was going to be my version of Home Is Where the Hatred Is by Gil Scott-Heron. It appeared on his album Pieces of a Man, which we worked on together. In the end, we came up with kind of an interlude, kind of took over the whole song. And so I decided that I would sing the song Home Is Where the Hatred Is. I would kind of juxtapose the lyrics over this new tune, this new theme. And to top it off, we asked Gil to come in and do some spoken word over it. And the effect is kind of electrifying. And if I just, for a minute, I just want to say that Home Is Where the Hatred Is means to me, it means no judgment. You know, we all have our problems and we all have our issues. Addiction is an illness, and this song is really about not alienating people because of their illness. It meant a lot to me because at that time Gil was going through his own problems with his illness. It was my way of saying, I understand. Following that, Aretha Franklin with 96 Tears from probably my favorite album of Aretha's. No, that's not true, because almost every album of Aretha's is my favorite album. But this one really touched me. I think that you're going to find out that a lot of the songs that are on my playlist here are tunes that affected me. So they're a bit older. They're from a time in my life that I was a teen, and I was still trying to figure out my place in music. But I told you I had eclectic tastes, and here is another side of some of the music I love. Ahmad Jamal, Emily from his album Tranquility. Ahmad Jamal is, like McCoy Tyner, one of the greatest influences of my life. I can remember hearing Ahmad Jamal's album Poinciana from his album Live at the Pershing as a little boy, and I always loved the way he commanded the range of the keyboard, all the way from the bass all the way up to the highest notes. Emily is no exception, and here he is. Enjoy. From Pat Martino, we will hear the song Masquerada from the album Starbright. Sadly, Pat passed away just a few weeks ago. I had the opportunity to sit in with his band, actually to play a gig with him at Birdland, which was my first time playing at Birdland in New York City as well. I learned a lot during that gig. At the rehearsals, he kicked my butt. I have no, I have no shame in saying that, because Pat Martino was one of the greatest and one of the kindest people that I've ever met. Pat Martino, Masquerada. Little Church by Miles Davis, written by a phenomenal multi-instrumentalist, Hermeto Pascual, from his album Live Evil. I really don't need to say much about Miles Davis. Again, one of the greatest influences of my life. And Hermeto Pascual, even though I learned about him much later on. If you don't know who he is, I encourage you to check out his music. He is a genius. Eugene McDaniel's Headless Heroes, from the album Headless Heroes of the Apocalypse. I had a bit of a problem choosing which song to use from this album because they are all stellar compositions. Eugene sings, composed all of these songs, the lyrics and the music. You might know Eugene McDaniel's work from the song made popular by Les McCann and Eddie Harris, Compared to What? Also performed by Roberta Flack. Eugene McDaniel's also, in a previous life, penned the song 100 Pounds of Clay, which was a pop song, a very well-known pop song in the, I think, 60s probably. But Eugene McDaniel's, lyrically, he is one of the revolutionary lyricists of the 70s. And just like so many albums that came out in the year 1971, including Pieces of a Man by Gil Scott-Heron, it stands the test of time. Eugene McDaniel's Headless Heroes. And speaking of Les McCann, Someday We'll Meet Again, from his album Another Beginning. I don't have a lot to say about Les McCann. I think if you listen to my music, you will hear a lot of the influences of Les McCann in my music. There's a very percussive thing that he does where he seems to play on one note almost as if he's playing on a drum. And this is something that I try to incorporate into my music as well. Les McCann, also a fantastic singer and one who influenced both Gil and I. It's Les McCann, Someday We'll Meet Again. Our second to last song, Alice Coltrane, Ta the El Daoud, from the album of the same name. What is it with these Coltranes? There is something that is celestial and extraterrestrial about Alice Coltrane's playing. She's one of the most spiritual beings that I have ever heard play the piano and the harp. She was a tremendous influence to the artist Shigeto, who did the remix of our song Nancy Wilson from Jazz is Dead 008. She is a tremendous influence to me. In fact, Gil and I, on the album It's Your World, recorded one of her songs called Gospel Train. It was one that we used to listen to quite a bit. And at some point, Gil decided he would write some lyrics to it. It's something you should check out if you get a chance. Alice Coltrane, Ta the El Daoud. And we will close today's show with Jimi Hendrix, Belly Button Window, from his album Cry of Love. Jimmy is a blues guitarist above all else. And I think that a lot of people don't really get to connect with that reality because of the guitars, the electric guitars, and all of the crashes and bangs and the pyrotechnics that go along with what you think about when you hear Jimi Hendrix, which is why I chose this song. Because even though Jimmy was a tremendous influence on Gil and me both, this is a side that most people don't get a chance to hear enough of. I present to you Jimi Hendrix, Belly Button Window, from his album, The Cry of Love. This wraps up the first ever episode of Genius and Soul, and I'm happy to be the first guest DJ. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
If you would like to listen to the rest of this episode, please go to geniusandsoul.com. If you would like to support our efforts, please go to patreon.com/geniusandsoul. And of course, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Genius and Soul. Thanks for listening. See you next week.